The play on the field, the court, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and vendors who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go Behind the Game with Patrick Klinger and Dave Boden.
Welcome to Behind the Game, presented by KLN Family Brands, a great Minnesota company that makes great products like Sweet Chaos Drizzled Popcorn and Wily Wallaby Licorice and Nutrisource Pet Foods. We're so proud to have KLN as the sponsor of Behind the Game. Alongside me, a man who, as a young hoopster back in Wisconsin, he was known as Duncan Dave Boden. It's just because he liked donuts. Had nothing to do with his basketball skills. He's never touched a rim in his life.
I beg to differ. When I was in 10th grade, I could touch the rim on the fly. I could dunk a baseball or a softball. Didn't come in handy, but I could do it.
You have any videos of that?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Nope. But thank you, Patrick, I think. We are joined today by Jay Pivec, longtime and legendary basketball coach, and I'm not kidding when I say legendary. Over 600 career wins, coached MCTC to the 2004 National Championship. I'm sure we'll talk about that. Named National Junior College Athletic Association National Coach of the Year, and a member of the National Junior College Basketball Hall of Fame. So truly a legend. And also an author, new author of a memoir called The Life of Piv, that shares his journey through the world of coaching and personal lessons he's learned along the way. So Jay, welcome to Behind the Game today.
I appreciate it. I appreciate the invite from Patrick, and most hosts would have already passed the licorice.
Yeah,
we could have a little bite
He's
to
kept
eat,
it
but
down.
He's
at
kept
his
it
end,
down
as
at
you
his
noticed.
end. Yes, I know.
Right, same old Patrick.
It's all about me.
We really are happy to have you here today. And just to start off with the new book, why don't you tell us what inspired you to write The Life of Piv? Was there a specific moment or realization that prompted you to share your story?
I had many people that thought, I have a good story. And I think all of us, you two guys probably have a good story to tell. And it isn't about sales, and it hasn't been about sales or selling the book. I had a story. And the problem was, every time I stopped, it wasn't writer's block. I thought to myself, what in the world am I doing writing a book about myself? I mean, that's sort of conceited. Prideful. Then I thought, well, I am sort of conceited and prideful. And I proceeded to put pen to paper, and the process took about 4 years. And it almost didn't get done on several occasions, but we hammered it out. I had a lot of good people that assisted along the way and gave me, the times I stopped, they said, finish the book. And so there it is.
That's great.
I've thoroughly enjoyed the book, Jay. I think it's a terrific read. But as you were writing the book, what is one of the most surprising things you discovered about yourself, going through, looking back on your life and reflecting on your career?
Well, one of the most surprising things was that I had boxes and boxes and boxes of press clippings that, who saved them? My mom, just like all the things that you guys have in your basement someplace and everybody else out there has in their basement, that their mom saved the clippings. I just happened to have 40 years worth. So I was able to go back and, I contemplated on almost every article that I read. So that's probably another reason it took 4 years, is I was reliving my experiences as a, 42-year college basketball coach. And the book talks about relationships, Patrick. And I'd have to stop and think about that because there were so many. And I hope that people that get a chance to read it understand that, your whole life is about relationships. It's about helping people, and it's about having people help you, mentorship. And that's a common theme in the book.
The book covers a wide variety of experiences, from the coaching side and the basketball side of it to personal challenges and life things that happen to everybody. Your career in coaching has a lot of highs and lows. Every season isn't great. Every job doesn't end maybe the way you'd like it, and you go through all of that. So when you were putting the book together, was it and went through all those memories. Was it fun or difficult or emotional at times to go through and relive all that stuff, or some of all the above?
It was almost hard to believe that some of it happened. And you know, if you look at the tagline on the front of the cover, it says, "All stories as true as they need to be." And I put that out there because some of them are sort of hard to believe. Even for me at this juncture, that the things that happened to me, you know, the times that I got fired but got rehired, it's like that really didn't happen. Yeah, it did. And at the time, painful. I look back though, I don't think I'd change it for anything. It made me who I was today, all those experiences. And so it's a culmination of everything that happened to me in my career. And, you know, in the book, I break it down into all my stops and I tell a story. A lot of it is self-deprecating humor. And I think if you can go that direction, then people get a better respect of how you're really feeling at the time when you write the book. And then at the end, I have Piv notes in the book, and it talks about the lessons I learned from that particular story.
The book is incredibly detailed. It's some very detailed stories. And there are even some incidents where you're describing the weather on a particular day back 30 years ago. Did you keep journals that allowed you to sort of be able to go back in time and recall some of those memories? Or was it really just from memory?
When you live in the Dakotas and you live in big sky country, it's easy to remember that when a Chinook came in, which is the warm weather coming off the Rockies, and you had a 70-degree day, and the day before it was 35 below, you don't forget the weather. And part of the journey was the travel. You know, our closest in Montana, and still to this day, our closest away game when I was at Montana State Northern was 187 miles one way to Helena, where Carroll College was located. And we were road warriors. And when you're on the road, you forget when the van broke down, when the bus broke down, when there wasn't heat in the van, the sandwiches on the bus were frozen. You know, all those types of things you remember. They're just sort of stuck there, and it's part of the journey. So I didn't have a hard time remembering those things because, like I said, you don't forget the storms. And there was always a year where a storm caused a game to be canceled, postponed, and talk about those in the book as well. It wasn't fun at the time, but it's fun looking back on those things.
So you mentioned some of the stories. You mentioned the tagline as true as they need to be, and some things are kind of hard to believe. If I could ask about one specific, maybe a decent example of that, how things would change was actually the process when you first got the job at MCTC.
Yeah, it was, I had left northern Montana on the heels of the worst year of my coaching career. We were 6-22, and those 6 wins, I was one shy of becoming the all-time winning coach at northern Montana. I just couldn't get over the hump. And that had been the year after President called me in and said, "What are your plans next year, Piv?" And I thought, coaching, and he said, "Actually, we're not having you back." And I said, "Yeah, actually you are." And that's when we had in the book it talks about that, I had already signed a contract and he had forgotten. So Minneapolis, I'm out. I think I'm out of the game. I think my career's over. And I happened to stop at Minneapolis Community College at the time, and longtime mentor friend of mine, Ralph Powell, was the athletic director. He said, "Timing's everything, Piv." Willie Owens, the coach at the time, had just resigned the night before, and the team had been 0-22, and things weren't looking great. And he said, "Let me call Earl," and Earl Bowman was our president who had announced his retirement. And he got on the phone, and it was, yeah, he's here right now, boom. So he says, he wants to talk to you now. Well, I was wearing a Tommy Bahama golf shirt, golf slacks, shorts, Bermuda shorts, pair of flip-flops, and of course I had my Ray-Bans. And I said, "I can't go into an interview like this," and Ralph said, "You need to." So I walked up, and an hour later I had the job. Never been so excited in my life, and I came home, and we were homeless at the time. We were staying with in-laws. And I told Mary how excited I was, and it was my birthday actually, it was June 18th. And first question she had, of course, was, how much does it pay? I said, well, that's not a very good question to ask. She goes, answer the question. I said, $6,000. She said, we got a family. I said, you don't have to tell me we have a family. I know we have a family. This will work out. And all those years it has. I mean, it was true as it could be. And but you think about all those things. You got a young family. You don't have a house, a home. You're staying with in-laws, and you're not making any money. I mean, the insurance business was looking real good there for a couple weeks. And you know, I was fortunate. I was in the right place at the right time.
Trying to picture the outfit.
Oh, it's a good outfit.
Did you save that for
no, I didn't save it.
Potential future interviews?
No, I didn't save it, but the piece of clothing in the book, and you've read the book, that I should have saved is the gold shirt, which was about when I was a lead singer in the band The Rare Breed. I didn't save the gold shirt either.
That's unfortunate.
That's a great story about the gold shirt.
It is a great, and I've been asked, do you have the gold shirt?
Yeah. You were a prolifically successful college coach. Over 600 wins, 605 wins to be exact. You won a national championship, you were National Coach of the Year, you're a Hall of Famer. Yet in the book, you list 30 schools, nearly 30 schools where you interviewed, yet were rejected. Why do you think that was? I mean, you obviously have proven yourself to be a terrific basketball coach.
Well, first of all, I'm glad you corrected it to 605, because the only guy that ever shorts me on the 605 is Coach Tower, who I worked 5 years as an assistant with. He'll introduce me. He's got like 603. I said, don't do that. It's 605, okay? So we got that straight. It's hard to get it. It's a business where it's very competitive. It's hard to get a job. And in every one of those jobs that I didn't get, they hired somebody good. Obviously, at the time, I didn't think they were as good as I could have been. And I was always in that, and this probably happens in a lot of professions, the grass is greener. You know, and after staying at Minneapolis for the 20-some years, it wasn't greener. I had a wonderful job, and that, you know, the title of that chapter is, you know, Making My Bones. And that's where I became sort of who I am in the Twin Cities as a basketball, the Piv. That was sort of where I developed it. And it, very simple formula. We had really, really good players. In fact, on almost every night, our players were better than the opponents, and that adds up. That adds up to win. You know, you look at teams. Every team now, we're at the beginning of the greatest month of the year, March, and for us hoop heads, that's, you know, Sunday's Selection Sunday. We get the brackets on the fridge. You know, my two daughters will pick their favorite colors of uniforms and probably beat me again on the pool. You have the best players, and you'll see that in the tournament. Cream rises to the crop. Even the Cinderella teams, you know, they'll pull one or two upsets, but the best players, and if they're coached well, they're the winning teams. And I had really, really good players throughout my career.
So I want to get to March Madness a little bit as well, because we are at that time of year, but you talked about your career and with MCTC, and you really did establish kind of a legendary program there with that institution, yet the program was disbanded in 2010, as you described. Can you describe kind of what happened there, what led to that?
I need tissue. Do we have some tissue here? This is where I start.
Got some.
This is where I start to cry. You want a broken heart. For about a week and a half, 2 weeks, there was a broken heart, and then you know, I talk in the book about resiliency. You move on. It was a mistake that won't be rectified. It never should have happened, but it did. And people in the sport community in the Twin Cities still to this day are shocked that there isn't a program on 15th and Hennepin in the core of the city that had the success that we had, right, that it could have been continued. That's that. Here we are today. I was back in the saddle shortly thereafter. I got a call from a guy named Ron Thomas, who was the president of DCTC. They didn't have a gym. They didn't have a ball, so they didn't have a ball rack. We had nothing. And he said, let's start a program. And I had to think about that. And I thought about it a long time. got the job, and again, immediate success. We were able to attract kids, brought the same coaching staff. I added Ed Cassidy to our coaching staff, well-known high school coach, Mark Zimbrowicz, well-known disciple of Ziggy Calls up in Mounds View, and of course my longtime assistant, Ron Gates. And we had the band back together, and we found some kids that wanted to advance. And you know, at the 2-year level, you're looking for kids that maybe aren't getting an opportunity, and you're selling them on their future. And we were able to convince so many student athletes that, hey, you do what we ask, you got friends for life. And we had great success at DCTC as well, but that was an interesting job too. We didn't have a gym. We played our home games downtown St. Paul on West 7th next to I'll give a plug to DeGidio's Italian restaurant, and we played the Salvation Army, and legendary place. A lot of basketball's gone through there, but it was a very interesting experience, and one I wouldn't trade for anything.
That's great. You described the young Jay Pivec as a cocky, self-assured coach. How did you change and mature as your career went along?
I think I got older. There's a lot more gray, a lot less hair, and I think age does that to you. You got a different perspective. The older I got, the better my teams became, Pat. It's sort of amazing. I talk about that in the book, and you know, you deal with. I think it's a mature thing, and you deal with immaturity in your players better because you understand where they're coming from because you were once there. And I was a self-assured, confident, cocky coach, and at times didn't handle myself as well as I would have liked to. Not sure that I was ashamed of myself, but I could have handled things differently. And the older that I got, the more mature I got, I became that sort of a model of decorum. And people that followed my career are saying, yeah, that's pretty right, because he wasn't a model of decorum early in his career.
With all your success on the basketball court, you undertook this project to put out the book. Can you describe a little bit about what you found out about the process of writing a book and publishing a book, and what kind of reactions have you been getting to the book now that it's out?
The first of all, anybody that has an idea in their mind about writing a book should. I mean, if you've thought about it and you haven't written your book yet, write it. Something that I found out from my publisher, the average number of sales for every book that's on Amazon, and we need to understand, and I drove by Amazon on the way out here, Amazon runs the world. Whether people want to believe that or not, they run the world. They have a subsidiary called KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing. There is no brick and mortar at Amazon. When you put your credit card in to buy the book, it isn't printed yet, and they won't print it till your credit card clears. And in 2 days, you have a copy of the Book of Piv. So that part of it is very interesting. But back to, if you have an idea, write the book. Don't sit on it. And I'm not a writer. In fact, my grades in English, let's just put it, I had grades. The writing part and my editors, and you know, I had 4 sets of eyes. My lovely bride, Mary Louise, she comes from a writer's family. Her father, John Hubble, was associate editor for Reader's Digest for 50 years. So she grew up around very talented writers. Howard Sinker, who's a legend in the newspaper world, he assisted and was glad to do that. I had an English professor from the college, from Minneapolis, and I had a librarian from the college. And they had ideas. And one of them was, you're a talker. You're not a writer, so talk about the book. So you get on your computer, you press that little thing that's a microphone, and you start blabbing away. And at the end of the day, you send it to one of them. And they go, great. You listen to it and go, great. I don't even understand what I said. But editors, writers, pick and choose. They know how to move things around. It was an amazing process. And they have sometimes ideas. How about this? It was funny, when my wife had an idea that I didn't like, I had to be very careful, because we still spend nights together.
think we all know that feeling.
Yeah, but there were times when I'd say, you're the editor, I'm the writer. No. And a good editor doesn't have their feelings hurt. You got to be careful, it's your wife though. So there's that part. And then you go through the part about, this wasn't written to make money. But I'm happy to say that we've sold books. We're about the 500 mark in terms of book sales. And they say that the average, for every book, you take your New York Times bestsellers and you go down to the book on bicycle mechanics and Zen, that maybe sells 2 books, maybe they sell 200, but the average is 200 books sold. I mean, not any more, not any less. And so I've surpassed that, and that's been sort of a neat thing. The book was a legacy thing, to get my story out there, to tell it, and I'm so thrilled when I get the response. And Patrick, you gave me hey, I'm not pulling your chain, Piv. It's a really good book. And everybody has told me that has read it, it's a really good book. Mm-hmm. So if you want to read a really good book, buy the book of Piv, $17.99 on Amazon.
60 Minutes recently did a feature on Danny Hurley. You happen to see that?
I did see it.
The head men's basketball coach at the University of Connecticut.
I happen to be a big fan.
Yeah, tremendously successful. If you watch that profile, it looks like coaching basketball is the most painful thing in the world. He gets no joy out of it. If he wins a championship, he enjoys it for seemingly minutes before he's back thinking about the next season and clearly the losses. And you talk about this in the book, that you remember the losses much more than you remember some of the big wins. I mean, tell me a little bit about that experience of the wins and losses and the joy you get out of coaching.
Yeah, the joy is the relationships, and it's an after-the-fact thing. Practices are great. Games are great if you end up in the left column. And I talk in the book about left column guys. And, it's pretty easy to judge a coach by their record. I had a young coach tell me one time and said, well, what if you switch the columns around? I said, nobody puts losses in front of wins. It's your win-loss record and your percentage. To a man, every coach that I worked with, every coach that I know, suffers with a loss. And they just think that the win is the way it should be. And so, the poor coaches that really aren't successful in wins and losses, and they can be successful in so many other ways as a coach, they suffer through that more than other people do. I can remember a handful of losses that are still with me, and I can't remember some of the championships. And so when a coach talks about that, when Coach Hurley talked about that, definitely understood. And I think any coach understood that in terms of listening to it. The times you lose sleep are after a loss, not after a win.
So we mentioned earlier, we're right about March Madness time. We got Selection Sunday coming up. I think you said best time of the year. We probably can all agree it is, and historically has been the best time of the year when March was coming to Madness. And in the old days, we'd take the day off to watch games and all that kind of stuff. And now college basketball has undergone a lot of changes over time, but especially the last few years with NIL, the transfer portal, players moving around. So as you look at the game now as a coach, but also as a fan, what are your thoughts about the changes to the game and how they've impacted it? Would you have enjoyed coaching now compared to before? And are you still a fan of the game? And can you still watch the games and enjoy them as March Madness comes up in the same way, given everything that's changed?
NIL, transfer portal, makes no difference come this Sunday. Zero. Everybody's going to forget about that for a month. Because if you're a basketball fan, and the reason you're going to forget about it, you got a bracket on the refrigerator at home that you're trying to figure out, is it broken? Is it busted? Do I tear it up? That's just the nature. It's interesting. This year I'm going to spend Final Four weekend in Las Vegas with my two sons. We figured we'd do that. I've been to 37 straight Final Fours. Last year was the first year that I hadn't gone. I missed it a little bit. It's great camaraderie, but I'm a fan now, and I watch it as a fan. I know so many of the participants. I've been in their locker rooms. They've been in my gym recruiting. That it's just one of these things that I can sit back. I don't take it too seriously about my bracket, although the family bracket with my four children and myself, I take that very seriously.
I think we all know that feeling
because I haven't ever won it.
I know.
Okay, I'm the basketball expert,
we share that.
And it's like what in the world? So I'm not telling anybody beforehand who my picks are, but one of my picks had their star player go out this last weekend, and I hope that he's back because I do like the Duke Blue Devils. So I don't think the game's changed because of transfer portal and NIL. No question. But starting Sunday when the teams are announced and they have the play-in games, which of course if you're a true fan, they don't count in your brackets.
Right.
You just get to your 64 and let it roll.
Right.
The thing is, after it's over, you're going to be talking about the transfer portal, who has the most money, who can buy the best team, and that train has left the station. It's not coming back. Right. That's who college sports are now at all levels. Because understand, it's not just Division I. Kid can get money at any level, and whether it happens or not, who knows. But it's a pro model, and I even think that you'll see the rules change more towards the pro game. The big thing they're talking about now is halves versus quarters. Mm-hmm. And men's basketball, Division 1, 2, and 3, we're still halves. We're the only sport that's halves. Everybody else is quarters. So we'll see what happens.
We're down to the last couple of minutes, Jay, but I wanted to ask you about successful coaches. They come in a lot of different styles, right? You had John Wooden, very cerebral, very thoughtful man, never allowed profanity anywhere near the program. Then you have Bobby Knight, complete opposite. Never met an obscenity he didn't like. Known for throwing chairs, yet both were tremendously successful. At the end of the day, what really makes a coach successful?
It's interesting, and I the news yesterday of a good friend of mine losing his job, Ben Johnson. I had made the comment. I spoke at Golden Dunkers before the Penn State game, and I told everybody in the room, and I had access to practices, so I was able to go there and watch. Ben did not lose that team. I mean, he has relationships with those players, and they didn't quit. If you watch them, they may not have been good enough, but they didn't quit. And I think that the true test of any coach are his players playing for him, or has the coach lost the locker room, that term that you hear. You don't want that to happen. So I think it's about relationships, trusting your players, and building trust so that your players trust you. I think that, and so you can look at all these coaches and how they coach, and sometimes I even look and go, I can't believe that the player is taking that from the coach and the coach dishing it out, but it seems to work.
I know we're down to our last minute.
I thought I had 5 timeouts here, and then now we're stopping the fun.
We got a lot more. This could go on for a long time. But do you have, just from the book, one Pivism or other piece of advice from the book that you hope everybody takes to heart?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they'll take it to heart, but I was told this morning working out at the Y, a guy came up to me and says, "You're Jay Pivec." I says, "Yes, I am." He says, "You remember me?" And I says, "No." And then we talked about how I should remember him. And he said, "I want to tell you about something in your book that I read." I have a line in the book that says, back when I was growing up and people my age were growing up, we didn't have life coaches. Well, we did, but they were called parents.
Yeah.
And I know that other people have also talked to me about that line and said, "Is that yours?" And I says, "Would it matter?" And they say, "No." Then it's mine.
Yeah. Great stuff.
Jay Pivec, thanks for joining us on Behind the Game. Congratulations on the book.
Yeah,
it is fantastic. Go out and get it. What is it, $17.95?
$17.99, yes.
It's a steal.
It is.
It's a steal. Thanks for being on Behind the Game.
Appreciate
Thank all of
Thank
you
you,
for
Jay.
watching Behind the Game, presented by KLN Family Brands. We'll see you again next month.